Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, I have an incredibly shocking and nerve-wracking story for you. It's about trust, betrayal, and the lengths one man went to uncover the truth. Imagine discovering that the person you love most in the world might be hiding something so devastating that it could destroy your entire life together. Well, that's exactly what happened in today's story. So, sit back, relax, and prepare yourself for I caught my wife's affair with the butler and it got worse when I fired him. 10 years into our marriage, I became very wealthy thanks to the percentage of ownership I had in my father's company. So, I bought my loyal and lovely wife a mansion for us to live in, which came with a butler who was prepared to take care of all the undesirable chores. My work schedule was pretty spontaneous because I could visit the office as I pleased or work from home. Our marriage and life together for the next 20 years after that were blissful other than some odd moments and occurrences. One day, I arrived home from work to find the butler with my wife, standing side by side doing dishes. She was drying, the easier part, but I didn't understand why she was willingly doing any of the chores and standing so close to him. Their elbows touched a few times, and I coughed to let them know I was there. My wife jumped, but he just moved away from her a little bit. She said she felt bad he was in here all by himself, so she wanted to keep him company and help a bit. She was so cheery and warm, I couldn't tell if she had any ill intentions. Another time, I came home to find her lounging in the pool with the butler gardening and staring at her. They laughed a few times before I came out to greet them. It was clear that they were at least friends, but I didn't like how friendly they were. I thought I was just being controlling and jealous, so I accepted that my wife was friends with and cared about the butler. What was the harm in that if I trusted my wife of 17ish years at this point? We spent every moment I wasn't busy together. I loved her, and I could tell she loved me. Yet another odd occurrence was when I walked upstairs to find the butler closing our bedroom door. It had been hours since I was upstairs because my wife was still sleeping. It was odd, and I asked him if she called for him. He jumped when I spoke and turned around sheepishly, although I could tell he wanted to act normal. He stammered and said she called to ask him for some water. I accepted that for a moment, but reminded him that he was not to enter our bedroom or open the door. He didn't know what to say besides, "Yes, sir." He walked away quickly, and I opened the door to find my wife in her panties drinking water. I asked her if the butler saw her like that, and she said no, she just took off her robe again. I was skeptical. I was heavily considering hiring a new butler. It seemed like she was flirty with him, at least, and I didn't like that he was most likely in our bedroom with my wife in her panties. Before I could terminate him, I saw him smelling my wife's panties. I know, it's really bad, really ballsy. I caught him on the security camera. I told him that was unacceptable and made my wife really uncomfortable. I didn't even tell her about it, but when I told him she was uncomfortable, he instantly looked like he didn't believe me. That ticked me off. I told him he was fired. I hired someone else, this time a female maid since I knew my wife was straight. I decided that even if I was jealous and protective, it was a smart decision. 1 week later, I arrived home to find the maid outside gardening. I went upstairs and found the butler I fired coming out of our bedroom once again, except this time he was dressed in regular, but still kind of formal, clothes. He looked at me like he was amused, but inconvenienced because I was there and saw him. I asked him what he was doing in my house again, and he told me my wife hired him for something else. He said it with such nerve, all I wanted to do was punch his smug face. I told him to leave and not to come back, no matter what my wife told him. As he walked away, I went into the bedroom and found my wife wearing a skimpy little nightgown. I asked her what was happening, and she looked nervous. She said I was home earlier today than the week before, and I told her she always knew my schedule was spontaneous and not to change the subject. She turned red and told me I was freaking out over nothing. I asked her why she couldn't explain why she was here in her skimpy nightgown after the butler I fired just came out of the room. She was pretty stunned and said she hired him back for things around the house the maid couldn't handle. I asked if one of those things was helping her with her personal plumbing and lubrication. Her jaw dropped, and she couldn't look me in the eye. Her cheeks must have been burning, they were so red. It looked like blood vessels in her face were showing up. It was crazy. Her face never turned that red in all the 30 years we were together. She finally said in a weak voice that if he did help her with that, it was nothing against me. I told her that it most definitely was against me because she belonged to me. We were life partners, and only I was permitted to help her with her plumbing and lubrication. She said she wouldn't ask him to help her again, and asked me not to worry about it anymore. I asked if that meant she was admitting to sleeping with him, and she was silent. She nodded yes very minimally, with her eyes watering. Then she started speaking really fast about how it didn't matter, she just considered it a job, nothing meaningful that would take away from our marriage, and she needed me to forget about it so that nothing changed between us. I told her this was most certainly going to change things between us, and it already took everything away from our marriage. I told her we were over, called her a name, and told her to get out of my home. I was extremely careful to get a post-nup signed after I came into more money. It's not that I didn't trust my wife at the time, it was because my father and I were lawyers, which means I couldn't ever be made the fool. So my wife sorrowfully packed her bags. She had too many bags for someone with nowhere to go. The butler came to pick her up in the car he afforded with the paychecks I gave him. They stayed in a motel where the butler had been staying after I fired him. My wife had so many belongings, clothes, that she had to leave some of it behind, which I immediately told the maid to sell on eBay, or keep for herself. They stayed in that motel as long as they could, but their money ran out without me signing the checks. They tried to contact me, individually, blaming each other for what occurred and asking me to take them back into the mansion. It was gratifying that they were turning on each other and failing to survive or do anything with their lives. Even to this day, my ex still tries to ask me for help and gives me some updated sob stories about where she is in life. It is not glamorous, it's far from what she was accustomed to with me. I've become something like Bruce Wayne in town, and I have no complaints. Even though her betrayal hurt, I knew from the moment I found out that I could recover from it. Not because of my money, but because I know what love is. And it wasn't that. OP, I am sorry your wife couldn't see what a great life she had with you. I honestly feel like the attention and sexual tension she experienced with the butler was too much for her immature brain to handle. It was a man in close proximity to her that she shouldn't sleep with, no matter how much he would have been willing. He obviously paid her attention, and when their friendship developed, she couldn't keep her legs closed. I believe she was egotistical and materialistic, and didn't have the respect she should for her providing and loyal husband. What this type of woman needs to understand is that resisting temptation pays off in the end. No man should be able to convince them to disrespect themselves and their spouses by breaking their vows and trust. I'm not sure what happened in your wife's head, but we are all here for you to offer support. Now let's get into our second story for today. One fateful day, when my wife went to work, she forgot her phone. I took the opportunity to check it, and was appalled by what I found. I should have known what was going on, because my wife, 25, was extremely excited about going to work suddenly. She said it was because she became in charge of a business task that she really enjoyed. It was something like designing different abstract images each day for a newsletter. I, 28, believed her. She was a good girl, and I was proud of her for earning us additional income for living expenses. The only other dead giveaway was that she didn't want to have sex as often, but then I knew why. It was because she was sexting with a coworker, sending pictures, and talking about the sex they had. It was disgusting. I drove to her work immediately. I backed up all the stuff for her phone, because although she wasn't getting it back, it was going to be deactivated. I brought it with me, and started by showing the receptionist, who I only met once before. Then I asked her if I could get a guest pass to go have lunch with my wife. She giggled and gave me one. She knew I was sarcastically infuriated, and this was going to be a heck of a show. She followed me in, putting up a "be back in 5 minutes" sign that she scribbled out. Everyone looked up from their desks to see me. I must have looked determined and angry. I asked everyone to gather around, and they did. I said I had some news to share about somewhere they all knew well. They were all sparkly-eyed with gossip endorphins when they found out who I was talking about. People started looking around for AP and my wife. AP came out of the bathroom just then, and we all looked at him. I announced that there was a guy who had the audacity to sleep with my wife. Some of the coworkers started shouting out insults at him. Among these, he was called despicable. Just then, my wife's head peeked out of her office. When she saw everyone looking at her, she went back inside and shut the door. Now everyone knew what my wife and AP looked like naked. Some girls whispered that they knew something was going on between them. Coworkers took the time to print/draw signs that said slanderous insults and taped them on my wife's office door. I thanked them for their creativity and left, wondering where the boss was that allowed all this to happen. When my wife got back to the house, I already had the locks changed. She took the stuff I let her have to AP's house. They both quit their jobs that day and walked out shamefully. In our town, there was just one major employer for like half the population. So when I shared with people the things my wife talked about and took pictures of, everyone in the area knew about it or saw it. It didn't take long for them to decide to move about 500 miles west. I couldn't have asked for a better outcome. Since she moved out of state, our divorce was made final through the mail. She didn't ask me for anything, thank God, but I would have been able to prove her infidelity anyway. She was done with me and the embarrassing past she was trying to forget. I felt the same way about her and couldn't be happier with the choice I made. OP, I am sorry your wife behaved like an untrustworthy office cheater. It's hard to get as low as a person who cheats on their spouse while utilizing their trust to earn income for the family. What are they even working for if not to improve the life they have at home? If they honestly believe the person they start an affair with at work or anywhere is better than the spouse they have at home, they're wrong. The grass may seem greener on the other side. Finding a person with a new set of features, issues, habits, goals, and interests is completely unnecessary. It is only a shame when a marriage or union ends because one spouse thought they found better in someone else or just thought they could effortlessly manage two serious relationships. Really, the only grounds for divorce, the proper way to end a marriage, is when one person absolutely cannot or will not honestly communicate with the other person. Thank you for sharing this story. I appreciate your bravery and bold confrontation. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. Take care. If this story touched your heart, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with others who might need to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new story. We'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more. Welcome back to our channel, where we delve into the most extraordinary tales of love, loss, and unexpected reunions. Today, we have a story that is sure to tug at your heartstrings and leave you speechless. Imagine discovering that the woman you left behind was carrying your child, and now, with a terminal diagnosis, you have one last chance to make things right. This is the incredible story of Alex, titled, "I Left My Girlfriend, Only to Find Out She Had My Son, and Now I'm Dying." Join me as we explore Alex's emotional journey from despair to redemption, and the unexpected twist that changes everything. Alex stared dejectedly out the window of his luxurious apartment. He achieved everything he dreamt of and even more, but he had no friends because there can be no friends in business. He was alone. His parents died almost 10 years ago. He was not married. At 40, he had no person to hug. The phone on the table rang. Yes. Mr. Wright, you have a deal at 3 o'clock. Can you come? Yes, I'll come. Of course, he will be on this deal. A week ago, after a painful treatment, when he recovered a little, the doctor called him and said, "Alex, unfortunately the treatment didn't work. You need to try another direction." How? And why did I suffer these 2 months then? Unfortunately, it happens. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 courses to figure out which one is the most effective. No, I don't want to participate in your experiments. He slammed the phone on the table and it shattered. A few days later, he put his business up for sale. He decided that he would spend the time he had left traveling in resorts and he would leave to die in some mountain village. He himself didn't know why in a mountain village. The doctor said 3 months, maybe a little more, unless a miracle happens. And a miracle can happen only in one case. If he agrees to a new treatment and it has not yet been fully studied, there is progress. This treatment helps people, but not all and not at all stages. He then asked the doctor, "What are the chances that it will help me?" "I'll tell you honestly, the chances are very small because, as I said, the treatment has not been fully tested. And why do I need it? To once again hope and then lose it? Not." Yesterday, he walked around the city on foot and was glad that he could still do it and was not lying on a hospital bed. He stopped at the church and some old woman immediately approached him. "Help me." He handed her some banknotes. Old woman looked at him in surprise. No one has ever given her that much money. When he was about to leave, old woman took him by the sleeve. "When you do good deeds, dying is not so scary because many people are grateful to you." He left and the words of the old woman still sounded in his head. He decided that when he got home, he would pack all his warm clothes and take them to the homeless shelter. Once he was one of the sponsors who created the shelter. People who had something bad happen in their lives could be there. Not homeless people chose their own path, but those who needed help. Someone was deceived with an apartment. Someone ran away from her husband. Someone else had some other reason and this place was never empty. Alex looked at the time. More than 4 hours remained before the meeting, so he decided to lie down. He didn't sleep well tonight. He sat down on the couch and immediately fell asleep. He probably fell asleep because suddenly the events of the past about 10 years ago stood before his eyes. 10 years ago, he met a woman named Wendy. Soon he was ready to make her an offer of marriage. Wendy worked as a nurse and lived with her mother. In general, she was an ordinary woman, but she told him that she only wanted his money, but he laughed in her face. What money? Wendy is a holy woman, but it turned out that he was very wrong about this. On the day when he was going to propose to her, she asked him for a large sum of money. He then replied that he would think about it and left her. He left, never to return. She called him the next day only once. He didn't answer the phone and she didn't try to contact him again. Perhaps he remembered for so long only Wendy of all the women he had, and he had a lot of them. He loved her. Alex woke up an hour later. He felt good. If he didn't know that he was sick, he would have not believed anyone, and the only change in the body was that he often required rest. During the day, a man could sleep 3 or 4 times. In the evening, after Alex returned from the meeting, he began to pack his things. Mrs. Hardy peeked into the room. "Alex, I'm here." "Mrs. Hardy, I told you not to come here again. I don't want you to starve to death." Alex smiled. The kind woman had been his housekeeper for more than 5 years. She immediately began to treat him with maternal care. She fought with him for a long time so that he would have breakfast in the morning. They even fought. Alex told her that he decides what to do, not her. But of course, Mrs. Hardy won, and he immediately began to eat porridge, scrambled eggs, and everything that was given to him in the morning. She was right. Alex felt better, and he was not tired, as if he had recharged since the morning. "And what are you doing?" "I decided to take some things to the shelter." "This is good, but I don't understand. Will you take all your things there, and what will you wear in winter?" "In winter, I won't need anything anymore." Mrs. Hardy pretended that she didn't hear his words, because she replied, "That's right, you buy yourself new clothes." She went into the room and began to help Alex pack his things. It took them an hour to do this. Then they had dinner for another hour, and Alex felt that he was dead tired. He decided to take things in the morning, and now he's gone to bed. In the morning, he was greeted at the shelter almost with hugs. "Mr. Wright, where have you been? We haven't seen you for a long time." "Mr. Heyman, I have a lot to do. By the way, you need to send someone to unload the car. I brought you things and food." "Of course, we will do it now." Come to my office, where we will drink tea. They sat, talked, and drank tea. There was a knock on the door. Mr. Heyman, can I come in? Come on, Paul, we have guests. A young man entered the office. He worked in the shelter as a lawyer. He was paid a salary from sponsorship money, and he helped those who were in a difficult situation. He greeted Alex and turned to the director. I came about the new girl. Seems like a real crime there. Alex raised an eyebrow in surprise, and the director hurried to explain. Recently, a woman came to us. Good and positive, but her husband repeatedly beat her, and now she ran away from him, and he doesn't give her the child, and besides, he burned their documents. What are the police doing? Nothing. He works for the police. But this is wrong. This woman has nothing. Everything in the family is registered to the husband. He immediately sued for the deprivation of her parental rights, and he found false witnesses who testified that she was a bad mother. Now, we are looking for anything that can help us, and she has no relatives. She has no one who could help her. Alex suddenly thought that he had a very large and beautiful apartment. Is this woman really good, and does she really need help? Yes, she once worked as a nurse, but then her husband ordered her to quit. It so happened that at first, he fenced her off from everything, and then he began to mock her. Can I talk to her? I have an idea. Of course. Paul, please invite Wendy to join us. Wendy was a nurse? What a coincidence. But there was no coincidence, because it was the same Wendy with whom he was in love. Alex sank into a chair. She has lost a lot of weight, and her eyes are completely red. Apparently, she cries a lot. Hello, Mr. Heyman. Do you have any news? One person wants to talk to you. She turned around and froze. Alex? Alex turned to the surprised director. Can you leave us? It turns out we know each other. Mr. Heyman was surprised by this fact, but he was also delighted. He felt genuinely sorry for this woman. She told him about her life, in which there was little good. Her mom died. Wendy couldn't find money for her treatment. At that time, Wendy was pregnant, but she refused to talk about the father of her child. She wanted to finish everything, but the same policeman saved her. He saved her from depression. True, he demanded in return that Wendy marry him. Her husband was 22 years older than her. Alex was silent for a long time, then said, I have only one question for you. Why did you ask for money then? Wendy looked up at him. My mother was sick. I urgently needed money for her treatment. Is your mom recovered? Wendy shook her head as a tear rolled down her cheek. No, I didn't find the money. Alex suddenly realized what a bastard he was. Why didn't you explain to me why you needed the money? She shrugged. You ran away right away. Then I tried to call you, but that is already in the past. What did you want to talk about? I want to help you. I don't really want to accept your help, but I have to do it. Not for me, but for the sake of my son, who is also your son. He almost lost consciousness. What did you say? What you heard. A week after you went missing, I found out I was pregnant. Naturally, I didn't look for you to tell the good news. You would think that I want money from you. He was silent. Of course, she was absolutely right about everything. There's no excuse for him, because that is exactly what he would have thought. An hour later, everyone who could help arrived at the shelter. Alex called the best lawyer and also called an acquaintance who was indebted to him, and at the same time was a friend of the chief of police. The thought that he had a son gave him strength. He also realized that his love for Wendy had not disappeared. He just convinced himself that love is no more. He left the shelter in the afternoon. Wendy saw him off. Alex, I heard that you have health problems. He looked at her cheerfully. Yes, I have problems, but now I know that I am not alone. I know to whom I will leave my apartment and money. Don't you have any chance? Tears streamed down the woman's cheeks again. How to say to you? The doctors offered me one experimental treatment, but there are also few chances. Did you refuse this treatment? Yes, I don't see the point in suffering. For what or who? I repeat that the chance is very small. Forget it. You have to do this for your son, for us. You are not alone. We really need you. He looked at her carefully, said nothing, and got into the car. And when he left the shelter, he took out his phone and called the doctor. This is Alex. I agreed to try. Now I have a meaning in this life. A year has passed. Wendy sat in Alex's luxurious apartment and talked to her son. Max, why are you so nervous? Mom, do you think Dad will agree to come with me tomorrow? I have such important competitions. Max, he is only being discharged from the hospital. We don't know how he feels yet. Mom, I understand. But Dad was very cheerful on the phone. Literally 2 months ago, they heard from the doctor what they had been waiting for so long. Everything worked out. Now a good rehabilitation and you can return to normal life. Alex was exhausted from the heavy treatments. He looked at the doctor in disbelief. Are you serious? There is nowhere more serious. Of course, you still have a long rehabilitation ahead of you. But I can already say now that we won. He didn't understand why his eyes were suddenly so hot. Yes, for the first time in his adult life, he cried. When he calmed down, he was able to call Wendy. We won. He listened with a smile as Wendy, Max, and Mrs. Hardy cheered at the other end of the line. This is his family and they are happy for him. Max saw his father first. Dad. The plane had landed 15 minutes ago and Max was jumping up and down in anticipation. He rushed to Alex, who hugged him, and then Wendy came up to him. She wrapped her arms around him with a sigh. Ux. Alex hugged the two of them and even closed his eyes at how good he felt. He is so happy now that words can't express it. He looked at Mac's dad. I have a competition tomorrow. Will you come? Max. Wendy looked sternly at her son and he lowered his head guiltily, and Alex smiled. Don't yell at the child. Son, of course I'll come, and I will even scream and cheer for you. And now let's go home. I got very hungry. I'm so fed up with this hospital food. I want homemade food. Wendy laughed. Mrs. Hardy has been cooking in the kitchen since morning. She's going to fatten you up after the hospital, and she won't even let us into the kitchen. And they went to the exit, hugging tightly. Thank you for watching this emotional roller coaster of a story. If you were moved by Alex's journey and the incredible twists of fate, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more heart-wrenching tales. What would you do if you found yourself in Alex's situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Stay tuned for more stories that touch the heart and inspire us all. Until next time, take care and cherish. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel where we dive deep into the intricacies of relationships and the lessons we learn along the way. Today, I have a story that explores the themes of trust, doubt, and the consequences of testing love. It's titled, I Tested My Girlfriend's Love by Pretending to Be Bankrupt, and She Disappeared. So, grab a seat, get comfortable, and let's explore this emotional roller coaster together. Al looked at Tori, who deftly took the roll with the stick and put it in her mouth. She acted as if she had been going to restaurants since childhood, although she lived in a small apartment and worked as an accountant. Tori looked great. It seems that she has rich parents who constantly pamper their daughter, and she doesn't get out of the spa. The girl licked her lips and smiled at him. Al met Tori at the gym. He came to run on the treadmill, and Tori was engaged in walking. A conversation began between them. She turned out to be a very interesting and quick-witted girl, so the young man's head quickly went around. Al was fascinated by her sincerity and spontaneity. But then, relatives and friends began to give advice to the guy. Al's mother said that he chose a girl for himself from the category of those who only need money from a man. His mother reproachfully expressed, his father supported her with a displeased expression on his face. Al tried to think differently. He was fine with Tori. He didn't believe that she was a windy girl or a liar. But those around him stubbornly imposed a completely different opinion on him. Therefore, condemnation settled in his soul like a heavy stone, no matter how much he wanted to get rid of them. But Al increasingly began to notice the fact that he began to treat Tori differently than before. He constantly tried to find a catch in her behavior. He wanted to understand if she was really interested in him, or if she only needed his money. And one day, he decided to talk to Andrew, his good old buddy, about Tori and his parents' relationship with her. Andrew said, Tori is a 100% hunter for wealth. Don't you yourself understand this? Do you think she earns money as an accountant for all this beauty? Al swallowed hard. Do all girls look beautiful only thanks to beauty salons? If a girl is well-groomed, then she is necessarily a hunter for wealth? He had many thoughts in his head, and each thought gave birth to a new doubt inside. Andrew spoke with a sly smile. And you check her out. Give her some expensive jewelry. If she agrees and accepts the gift, then she is definitely the same hunter. Al decided to try. Before that, he gave Tori only flowers and invited her on a date. And now he decided to buy her a gold chain with an emerald pendant, which would perfectly match the color of her eyes. When he presented the gift, Tori didn't refuse. She calmly accepted the chain and said that she had not been given such expensive gifts before, and she was very pleased. Al didn't understand anything at all. How should he perceive her behavior now? She's actually a hunter for wealth. Or an honest adult who doesn't want to waste her time needlessly rejecting gifts and bickering, just because pretty much everyone does it out of sheer shyness. He had even more questions, and Al didn't know how to find out exactly what Tori wanted. The man was embarrassed to directly invite her to draw up a marriage contract. He believed that he should share everything with his wife, at least in half. If not, give her everything, because she would support him and keep the house comfortable, because she would bear him children in the future, because she simply exists and that she chose him, although there are a lot of men around. His father sat at a family dinner noticing his son's condition. Al didn't quite understand him. What? His father advised. Pretend to be bankrupt. It's simple. Tell her you've lost everything, and live for a few days in a rented apartment. Take public transport, and see if your beauty girl stays with you or runs away from you. Al liked his father's proposal. The thought was actually correct. This way, he would be able to make sure that Tori loves him. Otherwise, he didn't want to think about another scenario, but at least he would not make the most serious mistake in his life if the girl disappeared. He would not marry the girl who needed only his finances. And now, as they sat in the Japanese restaurant, Al looked at Tori and prepared to tell her the lies he'd come up with overnight. But his tongue didn't want to turn. Al started. Tori, something happened to me. And he paused, noticing her worried look. This is probably the last time we have dinner at a restaurant. Tori was surprised. Why? You say that like you want to leave me. Al said with difficulty. No, they blocked all my accounts. Here's what's left of my cash. My apartment was also sealed, and my business is on the verge of bankruptcy. A bunch of checks from the tax and other nonsense. I'm not sure that I can afford all this, even if I return to work as a simple financer. Tori forced a smile and lowered her head. At that moment, something inside Al broke off. It seemed to him that he said goodbye to the woman whom he considered the best in the world. Tori didn't say anything else. And when Al saw her off, she just kissed him sparingly on the cheek and left. It's been 3 days, and Tori hasn't called him or even texted him. Al wanted to dial her number, but didn't dare. She made a decision and chose not him. So she didn't really love him. The man played this thought over and over in his head. However, 6 months of a happy relationship couldn't just disappear from his thoughts. They left an indelible mark. Al wanted to talk to the girl and sort out the situation. He even considered telling her that he lied about his financial situation. But then, Tori would have returned to him solely because of the money. Such a relationship would clearly have lost its passion and sincerity. Al began to frequent the cafe that he and Tori often went to when they were walking along the promenade together. He bought himself a coffee, sat down at a table and looked out the window. In his mind, he returned to the moments when they wandered along the shore holding hands. He remembered her smile, jokes, stories about work, and his soul became very heavy. Tori strongly sunk into the soul of a man, and she didn't want to leave from there. The rings of bells on the cafe door brought the man back to reality. Al glanced towards the entrance and froze. Tori entered the cafe. She smiled with some sadness, as if she didn't expect to see him and was not glad to meet him. But she sat down at Al's table anyway and greeted him. The man remarked, "Hi Tori." He had no idea what they could talk about. Only a week and a half had passed, and his soul went to his heels as soon as he saw her. And in that second, he was ready to confess everything and ask her to come back because he missed her. He went crazy without her. The girl started first. "How are you doing? I see that everything is fine with your business. I recently saw your interview on TV. Al opened his mouth, but closed it because the waiter came, and he could at least gather his thoughts a little to properly express what was on his soul. Tori ordered ice cream and coffee with cream, and the waiter left. Al looked at the girl. It was hard for him to even breathe, being next to her and realizing that she couldn't belong to him, and that all her love was feigned. And now she approached him, most likely because she saw his interview on TV. "Tori, I have to tell you something." Al hesitated to reveal his lies, although he wanted to tell her that she had failed the test. She whispered, "Speak." Al said and lowered his head. There was no bankruptcy. He had no idea where this conversation would lead, but he had to open his soul and tell her that she broke his heart and maybe he would feel better. "You decided to test me. I knew about it from the very beginning, even when you started talking to me then. Why do you think I decided to disappear from your life?" Al's eyes went wide. He felt restless in his soul, as if he had been circled around his finger or were trying to do it now. "Then why didn't you say it right away?" Tori pursed her lips, turned to look out the window and said, "Did I have to tell you something? Almost from the very beginning, I felt distrust on your part. When we first met, I felt so warm and good with you. I was sure that I had found the very man I could rely on, whom I could trust, and that it would be mutual. But it didn't last long. After meeting your parents, I felt pressured. It hasn't let go of me for a second since that day. You started acting like you were eyeing me, like you wanted to catch me red-handed, like some kind of thief. And after meeting your friends, you began to find fault with me for all sorts of trifles. Al, do you think I didn't see the face you gave me that pendant with?" Tori touched her fingers to the chain that hung around her neck, and then she unfastened the clasp. She took off the chain with the pendant and placed it in front of the man. "You were waiting for me to start reacting like those naive girls who are waiting for such a gift. But when they receive it, they begin to pretend that it's so unexpected. You and I are both adults. Why did you have to arrange this test for me? Why didn't you trust me? Why do you doubt me? Didn't you feel my sincerity and love?" Al had nothing to say. His temples throbbed and all the words were scattered in different directions. There was a void in his head. That's why Tori looked at him with such sadness then. She knew everything. She felt. And she didn't want to talk because she was in pain. The waiter brought Tori's order. She drank coffee and started eating ice cream, and Al didn't know what to say to her. He just sat, looked at the chain she took off her neck, and was silent, realizing that he himself had broken his love. "If you gave me a second chance, I would fix everything." That's the only thing Al could say. "Why would you need a second chance?" Tori took the money out of her purse and put it on the table. She rose to her feet and looked at the man. "You are too dependent on someone else's opinion, and I need a reliable person who will love me and trust me even if everyone around is against me. Unfortunately, people don't change at the snap of their fingers, and I don't believe that this will not happen again. Sorry, I have to run. I was glad to meet you, but that's all, and please don't try to find me, and better." Tori thought for a moment, sighed heavily, and added, "Don't try to bring me back, but reconsider your behavior and attitude to life. You can't be led by someone else's opinion all your life." Tori is gone. It was hard for her to be around Al, but she understood that his test and distrust would not allow them to be truly happy. She couldn't stay near him, and he just sat, looked after her, and couldn't move, because he actually screwed everything up and let go of the person who could replace the whole world for him. If this story touched your heart, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with others who might need to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new story. We'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more. Hello, everyone. Today, I have a story that is as heart-wrenching as it is shocking. It's about the complex dynamics of family relationships and the unexpected choices people make. This is Mom passed away, so Dad dumped me at my uncle's house and married his new bride. Get ready for a tale that will keep you on the edge of your seat as we dive into the intricacies of love, acceptance, and standing up for what is right. So, sit back, relax, and let's dive into this captivating story. My mother passed away before I was 10. My uncle, mother's elder brother, took me in and raised me, because my father had already started a new life and a new family by then. My uncle treated me well, though I'm not sure if my aunt feels the same about me as he did. My uncle and aunt had an only son who's around my age, and what he had, I had it too. For example, if my uncle got my cousin a laptop, he would get me one too, which would be of the same worth. My uncle even got me a car for my 18th birthday, so my cousin also treated me just like his own brother. I'm very grateful to have them in my life. Everything I have and that I am, I owe to them. But unfortunately, my relationship with my uncle has recently hit a slight snag. In my culture, it's usually the parents who will help out with purchasing a home for their sons when they get married. The reason is that people in my culture tend to marry young, but most of the time, we would not have worked long enough to save up enough for even the down payment. For a man not to have a marital home is considered a disadvantage, and the woman's family may not accept a proposed union, so a man having a marital home is very important. In my case, because my mother has passed away and my father is an absent parent, my uncle and aunt are my de facto parents. Indeed, my uncle said he would buy me a marital home, however, he has set a condition for that: I have to change my last name to his. Last names are a big deal in my culture, so this is not something that's taken lightly. My uncle said since he's been like a father to me, rather than my own father, and also as a remembrance to my mother, I should change my last name to his, which is also my mother's. So, basically, no change in my last name equals no marital home. I told him this is an unfair demand, because as I said, last names are a huge deal in my culture, and a change could trigger uncomfortable questions from people. But my uncle insisted that if I refused to change my last name, I would have to buy the marital home on my own, which is impossible because I'm a fresh grad, and it could take years to save up for the down payment. This could seriously set me back in terms of a romantic relationship and future marriage. Because of our disagreement, things between my uncle and I have become awkward. So far, my aunt and cousin have not said anything to me, but a group of close friends I've confided in told me I'm the idiot. I'm surprised by their reaction because other than this, I'd never gone against my uncle. I'm also very thankful to my uncle and what he's done for me, and I would gladly take up responsibility alongside my cousin to take care of him in his old age. It's just that I don't think I should be forced into making a fundamental identity change and be punished for not doing it. Am I the idiot? So, do I understand this correctly? You refuse to change your last name to your uncle's last name, also your mother's last name. Who took care of you since you were 10 and treated you like his own son just because you're afraid of uncomfortable questions from random people? Yeah, sounds like you are the idiot. I imagine OP's culture values some names more than others, as some names would be associated with a higher class, which sucks and makes OP the idiot, as he's more worried about what people think of him than grateful for his uncle's generosity. Someone who raised you like their own for your entire life wants to give you upwards of $250,000, and the only condition is that you change your name to the family name, which is also your mother's name. Oh, poor you, you must be so devastated. You are the idiot. He's done everything for you out of kindness, but he's not obligated to do everything for you. He's not your actual father, so he's not duty-bound to help you with your house. If you think he is duty-bound, then he is your father, and you should understand why he wants you to share his name. You can't have it both ways. Why is changing the last name such a big deal? Women are expected to do it all the time. I guess it's only men whose heritage and identity that are important. Everyone's the idiot here. You can't expect him to pay for a house as if he's your dad without legally showing you see him as your father. He's an idiot for putting this as a condition first, but he's not your dad. He doesn't owe you a house. Either save up for it yourself or change your last name. 38 male. I am single and childless by choice, but I'm close with my family, especially my niece and nephew, 18 female, Stephanie, and 18 male, Alexander. I own a small business near a major university that caters to students. It's mostly a bookstore specializing in discount textbooks, but we also sell coffee and baked goods and offer study areas. Since it's hard to find jobs that fit high schooler schedules, I've allowed Stephanie and Alexander to work at the store since they were 15. I had an offer with Stephanie and Alexander that I would either give them their payment weekly or put it in a bonus college fund for them. I recommended the college fund as it would be more useful in the long run, but it was still their choice. They could change their payment route anytime. Stephanie chose the college funds route while Alexander wanted weekly pay. Now they're 18 and going to college in the fall. Stephanie has a hefty amount saved up in her college fund. She claims it'll be enough to cover 3 years at her chosen university. She's also received several scholarships, so she can easily cover the rest with student loans. Alexander is much less responsible with money than his sister. He has virtually no savings because he'll almost immediately blow his paycheck on things he doesn't need. The longest he saved was for 3 weeks before he decided to spend it on a video game console. Alexander was accepted into his dream college, but said he was unsure how to afford it. My sister-in-law and brother were previously middle class, but lost a lot of money during the pandemic. They recently asked me if I was willing to help cover at least the first few years of Alexander's undergraduate program and how I could pay them in segments if need be. I could technically afford to, but I would need to take some of Stephanie's college fund. I told them that I thought it would be unfair to Stephanie to bail her brother out with the money she worked to save all those years. I have some of my savings, but it's an emergency fund if something happens with the store. My sister-in-law and brother were disappointed, but told me they understood. The problem is with our parents. They told me that it was selfish to leave my nephew unable to attend his dream school and I should split the college funds. I told them that Alexander had already gotten his money. He just spent it already. They told me I should then give away my emergency savings because most teenagers aren't that great with money. And if Alexander had to leave his dream school while Stephanie could afford hers, it could cause the family to resent Stephanie. And I should, quote, prevent that rift before their relationships get hurt. But the twins have always had a good relationship with each other. And I think it's unfair that Alexander gets bailed out while his sister has to work hard. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. Stephanie's college fund isn't even your money to take. She earned it working. That would be stealing her wages. If you were contemplating helping Alexander, it would need to be without touching the money Stephanie earned. As for pulling from your own emergency fund, no, this is all nonsense. Ask your parents where their contribution is. He had the same opportunity as his sister, but his choices now do not afford him the luxury of a debt-free college. This was his choice and his choice only. He can take out student loans, and since the grandparents are so concerned, they can chip in as well. All of this falls on Alexander only to solve. See how bad he wants to go to college and what he'll now do to achieve that goal. It's time he starts making better choices. Not the idiot, but you didn't contribute to her fund. You paid what you owed her. It's like saying my boss contributes to my rent. I am, however, curious about how 3 years of part-time wages added up to be enough money to cover 3 years of university for her. I, female 32, have recently inherited money from my mom. She was the only parent, and losing her is beyond devastating. The money can barely be called inheritance because my mom and her family didn't have much, but it's better than nothing. My fiancé at first said I deserved it, and I have the right to do whatever I wanted with it. However, he told his whole family about it, and then his infertile brother and his wife pulled him aside for a conversation. After that, he started talking about wanting and needing a nephew or niece, basically hinting about his brother's infertility issues, then flat out requested that I pay for his brother's and wife's IVF treatment for my inheritance money. I was taken aback initially, but then I declined. He got mad saying I was selfish because, number 1, he and I are blessed never to have issues with fertility, and number 2, literally have nothing to lose if I give them money, easy money that I didn't work for. This upset me to the point where I lashed out at him, telling him to stop bothering and guilting me about it. I denied the request as my final decision, but he got more agitated and went on a campaign to shame me for treating him as if he's not my future husband, and therefore gets a say or a right to my inheritance, and not giving a single crap about his family issues. What the heck? If my spouse asked me to just give it away as if it's free money, I'd be livid. Him speaking so insensitively about your mother's passing, nothing is easy about that, is another red flag. He's dismissing your experiences completely. He's putting his family's needs and wants before yours, and even asking you to do this is over the line, but he shames you for not giving in. More red flags. Please, please, please rethink this marriage. I think the inheritance was another blessing from your mother, showing you that this man is not meant to be your husband. So, maybe take a mini vacation by yourself, away from the who knows? You may actually find your soulmate there. He is showing you your future. Is this what you want? I'd ditch him and find somebody who won't treat you this way. He doesn't need a niece or nephew. He might want one, but it isn't a need. His brother and sister-in-law need to figure out how to pay for IVF independently. How would they intend to pay for a child? Put your inheritance money in an account that your fiancé cannot touch, or else it'll magically disappear, and his brother and his wife will be getting IVF. I won't explain much about my daughter's choice, because it's ultimately not mine. My wife and I have a daughter, Jay, 23, who just graduated college a year ago. My wife and I came from a poor background and worked our butts off to give our child everything she would ever need. She's a good kid, smart, kind, and polite. She got a full ride to a good school and moved away. 2 months ago, she called us to tell us that she was pregnant, with no father in sight. My wife flipped on her, full of exaggeration and criticism. She thought our kid was throwing her life away because my daughter was eager to keep the baby, and my wife wasn't okay with this. She asked me if she could come back home for a while, work locally, and overall just be around us, because she felt scared and alone in her big city and wanted to spend her pregnancy with us. My daughter didn't use much of her college fund, barely 18 to 25%, and had good savings. She's also the kind of kid who always helped around the house, so I said yes. My wife didn't have much problem with this, but ever since our daughter came back, my wife has been passive-aggressive at best. Awful comments about how she messed up her life, how naive she is for thinking she can keep going with the kid, how the beginning of a career is the most important thing, and she just ruined it. She also doesn't have any kindness for our kid, making too much noise at 5 to 6 a.m. to wake her up, not lending her a car when asked to do quick runs to the store, etc. She's just being mean. My daughter sucks it up because she thinks she owes us something for letting her stay here. Yesterday, my wife just went over the top. My daughter found a job. She's doing work from home at the moment due to her pregnancy, for months, and was excitedly telling us that after the birth, she wants to get an apartment nearby and maybe raise my grandkid here. My wife just snorted and said that if she had already messed up her life, the least she could do was do the best for the kid and move somewhere better and maybe do it now. My daughter cried because she was basically getting kicked out and my wife tried to minimize her feelings, so I told my wife to leave my house because I was done with her mean teenage behavior. She said I couldn't kick her out, but I could because the house is not marital property, so she left, and my in-laws are coming at me because everyone thinks she's right. Not the idiot. Your daughter's lucky to have you in her corner. Your wife is absolutely ridiculous and disrespectful. I hope she realizes she'll never meet her grandchild after this. You are protecting your child. All your daughter is doing is looking to her parents for support and her own mother is being so cruel. My daughter did much the same thing as yours, OP. She was young and alone and came home to us determined to make the situation a good thing. Her son was born 7 months later. She has since moved out, married, had another child, and gotten her master's. She works in her chosen field and makes a pretty penny, and my grandchildren have been raised beautifully. The point is that she hasn't messed up her life. She's taking a different path than the one your wife wanted. That's all. I really don't understand why the mom is so angry. Her daughter's 23, out of college with savings and leftover college funds, and has a job. She only doesn't have a partner, but why does she even need that? Plenty of single moms are raising kids with even less than this 23-year-old. Honestly, so weird, and this reaction feels way over the top. I think it's because the mom had dreams that her daughter's life was going to be better than hers. She would have a successful career and live in a big city and escape the town where they live, and now her dreams have been shattered and she doesn't know how to deal with it. I suspect she may have some regrets in her life that she doesn't want her daughter to experience, or she's not ready to be a grandma. I'm an affair baby. I've always been pretty well aware of this, but it's not something I tell many people. My mom was young when she met my father, and she was unaware at the time of their meeting that he was married. My mom discovered the truth about him when his wife showed up one day and told my mother that she better leave town. She found out about me less than a month later and told him, and this is when his entire family found out. My mom ended up raising me on her own mostly. He and his wife stayed together, but there were times I met and was around his family because they hated that he needed to child support, and eventually my mom had to agree to say no to child support to stop him from taking me. We then moved so I wouldn't be subjected to mistreatment. My father's children told everyone, and I was in school with 2 of his nephews who spread the news around that I was an affair baby and my father didn't want me. I knew I was hated. My father's children were never shy about that they hated me. When she was 17, one of his daughters told me she found me repulsive and hoped I would die from a horrible disease. I haven't seen or heard from any of these people in more than 20 years. I met my husband when I was in college, and I did tell him. He was always kind and promised me nobody would treat me that way again. He also respected that I didn't want the news to go around. His family was always nice to me and asked me questions about why I only had my mom. I told them I didn't have much of a family and my father hadn't wanted me. They found out the truth in a way that they never explained to me, but a few days ago they confronted me about being an affair baby, and how could I not tell them because it was really relevant. My husband asked them why. He said none of that was my fault. They said it was not so simple as my father being a dead beef and my mom being the wronged party. My husband told them it was never any of their business. They told me I was a liar and that I'm ashamed of what I am, which is why I don't tell people. They said my character was questionable, knowing what they know now, and that lying is never the answer. I feel so bad because my husband is supporting me, and this has damaged my relationship with his family, but I also hate that this is the exact reaction I didn't want. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. Why are they pinning it on you? You've done nothing wrong, and for someone to judge you for it is very strange. You didn't tell them because you didn't trust their reaction, and now that they found out, they're proving you right. So, tell them that all the trust you had in them is spent. One thing I've learned from my life experiences of being an affair baby is many people see someone like me as being dirty or tainted for being conceived the way we were. I was born in the South, and I found a lot of that where I was born. It's treated like an inherited part of who we'll be as well, and many people are disgusted by us for that very reason. Tell them my father and his side of the family were terrible people, who were the wrong ones here. He cheated on his wife, and I was the result. His family bullied my mother and me out of our hometown. Gee, I wonder why I don't like peeling back that scab to show you all the ugly bits you feel entitled to. Not telling you isn't the same as lying. Your reaction is exactly why I don't like telling people. OMG, I'm fuming on your behalf. Whatever happened in your past has absolutely nothing to do with this family. It's none of their business. You haven't caused this damage. They have by snooping, being so judgmental, and invading your privacy. Hold your head up high, honey. You've done nothing wrong. If this story touched your heart, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with others who might need to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new story. We'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more. Hello, everyone. Today, I have a story that is as heart-wrenching as it is shocking. It's about the complex dynamics of family relationships and the unexpected choices people make. This is Mom's New Husband Made Me Feel Unwanted. My revenge years later shocked them both. Get ready for a tale that will keep you on the edge of your seat as we dive into the intricacies of love, acceptance, and standing up for what is right. I, a teen female, graduated high school a year early and decided instead of taking a break, I wanted to start college immediately. So I did a semester at a community college last year just to get ahead. And now I moved onto campus to finish my degree. I lived with my mom, 42, and her husband, Ryan, 48, halfway through high school because my siblings, Amy, tween, and Liam, pre-tween, wanted me around. And I wanted to see them too before I started doing adult stuff and got too busy to come around as often. As much as I loved being near my brother and sister, I hated living in the same house as Ryan because he and his family weren't shy about the fact that they didn't really like me. When he and my mom first got together, it was like I was being purposely excluded from everything he and his family would invite us to. On holidays, I'd have a seat at the table, but no one would really talk to me. I'd be asked to take pictures instead of being in them. And anytime I'd try to make an effort to be included, I was always told that it was just for the family, not me. It got worse when they had my siblings because then I'd have to sit on the sidelines and watch as my brother and sister were enthusiastically accepted and wanted by Ryan's family. At the same time, they made it blatantly obvious that they didn't want anything to do with me. Sometimes Ryan would schedule family outings, but find a way to leave me at home, or he'd just say I wasn't invited. The last straw was when Ryan's sister got my mom a Mother's Day gift a few years ago. It was a locket with a picture of my brother and sister in it. And she said it was so my mom could always have her two children close to her heart. My mom didn't say anything about me. She didn't even glance in my direction. So I stopped trying and just accepted that I'd never be a real part of her new family because I just wasn't wanted there. I'd been slowly packing my things up for the past year, either taking them to my dad's house or getting them ready to go to my dorm. So on Saturday, when the move-in day started, I put everything I planned on taking into my car and drove myself to campus. My dad met me there and we decorated my room together. My mom thought I was just spending the weekend with my dad. So when I told her that I wasn't going to be coming back during the week because I'd moved in already, she got really upset. I mentioned the dates to her weeks ago, but I guess she forgot. And she ended up assuming I was having a regular weekend. She said it was hurtful that I would exclude her from this huge moment in my life. And that is my mom, it's her job to be there for this journey and me. I told her that she'd been letting her husband exclude me from her life since the day they started dating. And because that never seemed to bother her, I didn't think it'd be a big deal for me to do it too. I felt justified in this at first, but I could tell I hurt her feelings. And now I'm starting to think I'm maybe the idiot. Not the idiot. She allowed you to be cut out of her new family. So next time she calls, ask her how many children she wears next to her heart and then go live your best life. Actions have consequences. Mom now has the consequences. Yeah, why she never said, oh, but I have 3 children or OP's family, they should be in this picture or event. She chose to leave you out because it would ruin the harmony of her new family. Your mom didn't want to start anything negative with Ryan and your relationship suffered. Her finally noticing when it's too late is not your guilt to carry. It's her and Ryan's. What's particularly annoying about the stepdad's family is that OP is only 8 years older than the first half-sibling. So she was likely just 6 or 7 when her mom and Ryan married, possibly even younger. So who the heck treats a small child like that and continues to exclude the child over the years? My best guess is Ryan has a lot of money and mommy doesn't want to rock that boat. OP, you had told your mother the date you would be moving on to campus several times. So she would have remembered it if it was important to her to be there. I'm sorry, but your mom reaped what she sowed. My 27 female best friend, Kathy, 26 female, is a professional wedding planner and has helped host hundreds of weddings. We've grown up together and having a professional help me with a wedding free of cost was ideal. I made sure to shower her with gifts to repay her for the help she offered throughout the journey. Now the wedding is in a month and in 2 weeks it's my bachelorette weekend. Kathy notified the other girls and me of all she had arranged and which Airbnb she booked, but she said she didn't want to participate. Which came as a shock to me because how are you going to plan everything but not participate? The girls told me she had a very valid reason, but it was not their story to tell. So I should ask her directly. I asked her and she replied, look, you've made some requests for your bachelorette party and I respect everything you want to do, but there are some things that are off limits for me and some of the stuff, such as the male dancers I've booked for you and some other activities are crossing boundaries regarding me and my own fiancé's relationship. So I made sure to arrange everything perfectly, just how you and the girls wanted it to be, but sadly it's not something I want to be involved in. I hope you have the greatest fun. I was heartbroken and tried to suck it up, but as the days went by, I got more upset. Instead of feeling more at ease with that thought, I tried to talk to her about it to change her mind, but she wasn't having it. She later also said that just to warn me, she won't drink at the wedding because she doesn't want to get sick since she's very lightheaded. I got very disappointed, and at that moment I straight up told her I didn't want her as a maid of honor if all she was gonna do is be a buzzkill about everything regarding my wedding and how she could attend as a simple guest. She got very upset and thought it was unfair of me to exclude her for these reasons. The rest of my bridesmaids now also believe that I took it too far and how her skipping the trip for personal or not drinking alcohol is not something that would ruin my wedding and I'm just overreacting. Am I the idiot? So let me get this straight. Your so-called best friend who typically gets paid to plan weddings has been planning yours free of charge and you kicked her out of the wedding party because she personally opted out of the club and drinking with no pressure on anybody else to do the same. Yep, you are the idiot. I'm surprised that a mature and gracious woman is somehow best friends with a shallow party animal, and situations like this have never come up before. I wonder if OP's idea of best friends and grew up together is quite the same as others. At best, I guess they were kids together and then separated for college and Kathy grew up and OP didn't. At worst, I suspect OP's definition of best friend is someone who'll listen to me chatter on about my life. You are the idiot. She did a fantastic job of planning everything for you the way you wanted, even though she wouldn't get to enjoy it. She was not judgmental of what you wanted, just politely bowed out because it was beyond her boundaries, but you've decided the main criteria for being your friend is enjoying getting drunk. So good luck with the rest of your adult life and marriage. I'm sure it's all going to work out great. This happened at my wedding. I am detail-oriented and meticulously planned our wedding with my husband. Everything was color coordinated and everything was aesthetically pleasing. Our colors were pink and black. I wanted my parents and grandparents also to wear our wedding colors so the wedding photos would be cohesive. I specifically spoke with each person and told them the color scheme and how I'd like everyone to color coordinate. No one had an issue with this, so I thought. Both sets of husbands' grandparents went out shopping to find clothes to match our wedding party. I thought that was so cute and appreciated it immensely. My mom and I went shopping for my grandparents because they asked us to, so they were also matching. I offered to take my mother-in-law shopping to pick out something to wear, but she declined and said she'd go with her friends. I said okay and kind of forgot about it. On the night of the rehearsal, my mom asked my mother-in-law what she's wearing and she responds with a long dress in the wedding colors. The next day I'm getting ready in the bridal suite and my mother-in-law moseys on in and is wearing a royal purple ball gown. She doesn't wear makeup that often and I was shocked to see she was wearing neon blue eyeshadow and bright pink lipstick. Also, her husband wore a matching tie. I was livid but ignored it because I didn't want it to ruin my big day. My father-in-law asked me how he looked during pictures and I responded, "You and mother-in-law stick out like big sore purple thumbs." He asked what that meant and I told him he knew the dress code, now they look out of place. He said he wore what was given to him and would relay the message to my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law approached me later in the night and asked me about my issue. I asked her why she lied about her outfit choice. She said she never bought a dress that would go with our wedding colors and plans on wearing the purple dress she found. It was more true to her and that's what mattered. I said, "That's fine, I'll fix the pictures in post-production." She said I wouldn't adjust anything, they paid for the pictures and I would not alter anything. I said any picture I post with her in it will be altered on my end so they have no control over what I do. I excused myself and enjoyed the rest of my wedding. My mother-in-law has a habit of making things about her and making little comments like, "Well, I'm the mother of the groom, my opinion counts or I can make decisions too. I'm the groom's mother and we are helping pay for this wedding. My parents paid for 70% of the wedding, my in-laws paid for the photographer and the rehearsal dinner. The photographer was their friend and only charged them $800 for the whole night. The rehearsal dinner cost $300 because they chose the cheapest options for everything possible. So am I the idiot for how I spoke to my mother-in-law and father-in-law? Not the idiot, her big eyesore didn't turn out the way she wanted. Those are your photos, not hers. If they didn't intend those photos as a gift, meaning you get free reign, then they should have made that clear way before the wedding. Maybe it's just me, but it seems like mother-in-law purposely chose to pay for the photographer so she could pull this stunt at your wedding. Mother-in-law missed her opportunity to show up in all-black funeral attire and be technically justified by the color scheme. Amazing, she must not have thought of it. Your mother-in-law is an attention seeker. Go ahead and alter the pictures. Just to be funny, why not alter one picture so everyone wears purple and mail that to her? Everyone's the idiot here. You all sound exhausting. Whether the attention-seeking or the micromanaging, are wedding color codes a new thing? Are they an American thing? Mother-in-law obviously finds you insufferable and fired back. Her choice was obnoxious and just made her look bad. She so clearly wanted to look out of place, let her. It's not like you'll be hanging a picture with her in it over your bed. Instead, display the pictures with your husband and have a chuckle at mother-in-law's immaturity while you work on letting go and unclenching a bit. My daughter, teen, has a 529 that my ex-husband and I set up and have been paying into. She has about 73K in there for her college. My husband and I broke up amicably, so we still have been contributing jointly. My current husband and I started dating 6 years ago and got married 3 years ago. His son, 18, is attending college this fall and is paying out of pocket. He and his ex-wife apparently didn't save anything for his son, and so he has to take out loans. He brought up the idea of splitting my daughter's college fund with his son because she's a few years from needing it, so he thought I could take out half of what I put in to give to him. I told him I've been paying for my daughter way longer than we've been together, and she knows there's money set aside for her schooling. No one is entitled to it but her. He laughed it off and accused me of being too serious. Last night, though, he brought it up again and got more demanding, saying his son will be stuck with a ton of debt and I've known him since he was 12 and I should help. I told him he had to help his son, and I never agreed to help him pay for college, especially not through my daughter's fund. He got angry and accused me of not loving his son, otherwise I would be sharing the college fund, and drove off. He came back after a few hours and apologized, and then this afternoon, after work, he brought up me helping his son with college again, which I shot down, and he got angry at me again. Not the idiot. His poor planning is not your problem. He's had 18 years to plan. His son isn't entitled to the fund you and your ex-husband are funding. Your ex-husband isn't doing that for him. He's doing it for his daughter. He could ask you to help out his son currently, but even then if you say no, it's not fair for him to get mad. I think OP's ex would be hugely angry, I mean erupting like Vesuvius, if the money he contributed to their daughter's college fund was diverted to some rando kid he's not related to. OP should tell hubby that he needs to talk to his ex, to give up half of that money and let her know how that works out, and draw a line in the sand. Make sure your husband knows that the money will never be going towards his son, and he should never ask again. Seriously, draw that line in the sand. I'm mad that he's already brought it up so many times. This has nothing to do about loving your stepson. You can love him with all your heart and still not screw over your daughter. My girlfriend, well, fiancé, 28 female, and I, 29 male, had been dating for about 4 years and have lived together for 2. A week ago I proposed to her and she said yes. We are both delighted, but there's been one hang-up. Her family's very old-fashioned and traditional. After I proposed, she told me that even though she said yes, she wants me to ask her dad for permission to marry her. She told me that it's a critical tradition in her family, and even though she knows it's old-fashioned, she still wants me to do it, and she refused to announce our engagement to anyone before I did. She said that her parents would disapprove of our marriage if I didn't do this, and she didn't want to alienate her family like that. She has 2 older sisters who are both married, and their husbands both asked her dad for their hands in marriage. She has an older brother who asked his wife's dad for permission to marry her, too. It's a big thing in their family. I told her that sort of thing doesn't sit well with me, and I think it's misogynistic, patriarchal, and degrading. I told her that neither of us should have to ask anyone's permission to get married, and since she already said yes, why does it matter what her dad says or thinks? She told me that she knows it's silly and outdated, but this is how our families always operated, and it's important to them. I asked her if it's important to her, too, and she said it's important to her parents and her family, which means it's important to her. I asked her what would happen if her dad said no, and she said we could worry about that only if it happened. Now, I don't want to do that. I think it's a horribly outdated practice that removes all agency from women being able to make their own choices regarding marriage. I explained this to my fiancé and told her we should just tell everyone that we're engaged and no one can do anything about it. She told me she doesn't want our engagement announced to anyone until I do this, not to my parents, not to friends, nobody. No one else is to know we're engaged until I ask her father's permission. I refuse to do this, and I'm tempted just to tell my parents the good news because they deserve to know, but it doesn't mean anything to my fiancé or me, and it's only to placate her dad's outdated views on marriage. If he disapproves of our marriage over one stupid question, that's his problem. It doesn't change the love his daughter and I have for each other or the dedication we have to spend our lives together. I just want to celebrate our engagement with family and friends, and she's making me jump through a dumb hoop first. She had never told me that this was a requirement of getting engaged or married. She only told me I needed to ask her dad's permission after she said yes to me. When I said I wanted to announce our engagement, that was the first time she told me I needed to ask for her dad's permission. You are the idiot for calling and treating something your partner has specifically said is very important to them as a dumb hoop. I agree with your reasoning and your reluctance to do this, but family traditions that are important to your fiancé are not dumb just because you don't like them. Don't announce your engagement to anyone until your fiancé is on board. You disrespect her like that, she may well call off the engagement with good reason. Yes, it's outdated, but this is her family and you'll need to come to a compromise together. Yeah, I get it. Women aren't property. It's a silly tradition, but she's making it super clear that it's important to her. You know, the woman you love and are about to marry? Asking for his permission doesn't make things any worse for other women. If it did, I'd be 100% on your side, but it doesn't affect anyone other than you, her, and her family. Honestly, I see how it's degrading to all parties involved apart from the dad whose ego needs to be appeased. It doesn't help that women are so brainwashed into the misogynistic patriarchal traditions that they actually wanted and it's important to them. For me, both their points of view are valid. It's important to her and her family. OP sees it as degrading and outdated. Both are valid. They need to sit down and talk it out and see if they can find a compromise or if the OP can make the sacrifice for her. If this story touched your heart, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with others who might need to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new story. We'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more. Hey everyone, welcome to our channel where we delve into the most heart-wrenching and compelling stories about family, relationships, and the human spirit. Today, we have a story that will leave you shocked and emotionally moved. It's called, My Daughter's Cry for Help, the terrifying discovery of her stepmother's abuse. This is a powerful tale about a father's journey to uncover the truth behind his daughter's suffering. Let's get right into it. What are you doing, Bill? Can a man drink that much? Lamented neighbor Mrs. Hogreave. She looked reproachfully at Bill, who was like a son to her. I'm in grief, don't you know, Mrs. Hogreave? Bill whispered, crying and swaying at the table with the drink in his unsteady hand. His red swollen eyes looked distracted and vacant, his cheeks and chin were covered with long stubble, which made him look miserable and untidy. Mrs. Hogreave wrinkled her nose. Yes, you are grieving, but she's grieving too. The woman pointed her hand at the little crying girl huddled in the corner of the sofa, and looking from there frightenedly at her father. She may be 100 times more hurt and scared than you are, she's only 6 years old, and not only has her mother died, but her father has turned into a monster. Mrs. Hogreave stood in the middle of the room, her eyes sparkling angrily. She turned to the little girl and spoke to her. Now her voice sounded very soft and gentle. Come with me, Esther. Daddy will come and get you when he gets a little better. Esther immediately responded to her neighbor's affectionate appeal, ran up to her and wrapped her little arms around her. Her little eyes looked hopefully at the kind elderly woman. And you, Bill, get yourself cleaned up and stop drinking. Esther will stay with me for a while. And remember, you are the most dear person in the world to her now, and you have to think about her first now, and not about how you're hurt and miserable. Mrs. Hogreave took the girl and left. There was an oppressive silence in the house. Bill's hand reached for his glass, but he suppressed that impulse. Mrs. Hogreave is right. It is necessary to live at least for Esther. The man collapsed face down on the sofa and tried to forget himself in an anxious sleep. Before his eyes, as on a film, flew all his family life. Here is his beloved Helen, beautiful and happy in her wedding dress. She happily tells him, you and I are going to live happily ever after. And then suddenly a very recent picture came to mind in which she, pale, exhausted by illness, with a headscarf on her head, was speaking again. But now her voice sounded quiet and sad. You should take care of her, Esther. Don't leave her. Bill shuddered at these memories and cried again, this time of great shame in front of his wife for not coping. A few days later, he, clean-shaven and sober, stood on Mrs. Hogreave's doorstep. Hello, I've come for Esther, he said with excitement. Oh, you have come to your senses, the older woman looked at him sternly over her glasses. Well, come in, but you need to wait. I've put Esther to bed after lunch. She needs daytime sleep now more than ever. So you and I will drink tea meanwhile. I have baked donuts with her. Thank you, Mrs. Hogreave, for shaking me up. They sat at the table and talked quietly, reminiscing while little Esther was sleeping, curled up on the old couch. That's how my son used to sleep, Mrs. Hogreave said, looking at the girl. He was so cute. And then he had an accident at work. It was like I lost my meaning in life. I didn't know why I live, why I work. You are luckier than me, Bill. Look, there's the meaning of your life, sleeping on the couch. Esther woke up exactly 1 hour later. As soon as she opened her eyes, she immediately rushed off the couch and jumped on her father's lap. She happily stroked his shaven cheek, saying, Daddy, my daddy is back. At this point, I would like, of course, to say that everything had settled down. But that would not be quite true. Sometimes Bill would get depressed again, and he would drink again. And once again, Mrs. Hogreave would take Esther to her place for a couple of days. Time went by. Esther went to school. She studied well, and Mrs. Hogreave was always ready to help if Bill suddenly went out of order for a few days. And then one day, Bill brought a woman home. Daughter, meet Paula. She's going to live with us, and I hope you'll be friends with her. A beautiful tall woman looked at the girl, slightly squinting her eyes and smiling. She was as bright as a candy wrapper, and Esther smiled at her. Finally, Daddy will be happy. He will stop drinking and crying at night, thought the little girl. And she was right. Her father adored his new wife. But her relationship with Paula did not work out. Everything was fine in front of her father. Paula was usually smiling and talking affectionately to the girl. But when he was away, she literally abused the child. Esther could not understand why her stepmother hated her so much. Not a day went by that Paula did not scold or humiliate her. The girl said nothing to her father. She thought that if Paula left, her father would get sick again, and he would start drinking and crying at night. Noticing that her stepdaughter unrequitedly accepts all the abuse, the woman became brazen and sometimes began to beat Esther for the smallest mischief. Each time, the slaps grew stronger and more painful. What is this? Asked Bill once, noticing a bruise on the daughter's arm. But Esther only lowered her eyes to the floor, hiding her tears, and said that she had fallen accidentally. She saw her stepmother looking at her triumphantly and haughtily, standing at the window and folding her arms across her chest. After that incident, Paula, remembering how her husband had found bruises on Esther's body, was now smarter and tried to beat her so that no marks were left. The little girl became thin, pale, and cried a lot. But still, she kept hiding the reason from her father. Then Bill decided to ask his wife about everything. Paula, there's something wrong with Esther. Maybe she's sick, he suggested. What's wrong with her? She should be punished. She's rude and lazy, doesn't even wash a cup after herself. She just mocks me. I treat her with all my heart, and she looks at me like a wolf. The whole time, Esther looked at her stepmother with her eyes goggling. She had no idea it was possible to lie like that. Esther said her father sternly, "What's going on? Why don't you listen to Paula? What do you want?" But the girl could not say anything. In shock, her eyes instantly filled with tears. "I want to go to my mummy," she finally shouted and ran to her room and stayed there until morning. It probably would have lasted a long time, or rather, as long as Esther's health could stand. But once again, Mrs. Hargreave intervened. She purposely spotted Bill rushing to work. "Hello, Mrs. Hargreave." The man was pleased to see his neighbor. "You've completely stopped coming to see us. In vain, both me and Esther are really missing you." "Oh, I tried to stop by the other day to get to know your wife and to talk to Esther, but right then I had to go home." "Why?" wondered Bill. "If I tell you, you wouldn't believe me anyway. You'd better come home early from work. Best when Esther comes home from school. You'll see everything with your own eyes." Bill was on his way to work, and his heart was not in the right place. There was something in his neighbor's words that made him uneasy, prevented him from thinking about anything else but what was going on at his house while he was away. Why has a good, obedient girl become frightened, withdrawn and worse at school? Paula says Esther is silly, but she isn't. She's always been praised at school, thought the man. A little later that day, Esther had barely come home from school when her stepmother met her at the door with a wet towel in her hand. "Well, come in, you poor thing," she hissed threateningly. "So, you want to go to your mother? Well, I'll give you such an opportunity. She's probably waiting for you there, you ungrateful little wretch." She slapped the girl on the back with a wet towel with a kind of rage. Esther cried, screaming in pain. "Stop it at once." Suddenly heard Bill's voice from the threshold. He decided to take his neighbor's advice after all, and what he saw made his hands shake. "Bill, darling, I didn't do it on purpose. She just drove me crazy. Let's give her to your mother or to an orphanage. It's not my fault. I don't know why she makes me so angry," shouted Paula. "Are you crazy? An orphanage? I'll put you in jail. I never thought you were capable of such a thing." Bill rushed to his daughter. "Honey, tell me where it hurts. Forgive me, my little one." Esther hugged her father tightly around the neck and cried loudly. All the tears she had not cried for all that time were rolling out of her eyes in a hail of tears. Mrs. Hargreave quietly entered the room and looked with unconcealed contempt and hatred at Paula, who was packing her suitcase. "People like you should be imprisoned or isolated from society for life," she said to Esther's stepmother. But the woman only smirked in response. "It's not my duty to take care of other women's children." "So why did you marry him? You knew he had a daughter, didn't you?" resented the elderly woman. "Are you really that silly?" "I just thought I'd eventually persuade Bill to put the girl in a boarding school." "Get out," shouted the man, still continuing to hold the girl close to him. "Otherwise, I'm not responsible for myself." Paula, with her head held high, rattling her two suitcases, walked away. Bill held Esther in his arms for a long time, saying, "Forgive me, my dear, that I didn't see or hear anything. You've been through so much. Remember, you must always tell me if you have something that worries you. I'm your daddy, and I'll do anything to make you happy. You're my joy, you're my life, and I love you more than anything in the world. And I love you very, very much, Daddy." A child psychologist worked with Esther for a long time afterward, and now the girl is fine. Bill did not marry again after this incident. It was enough for him once. He says that his daughter is dearer to him than anyone else in the world. And Mrs. Hargreaves is still helping them in the neighborhood. If this story touched your heart, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with others who might need to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new story. We'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more unforgettable stories.